This is my 28th video on my work with OO gauge. See part 1 of this series for my reasons for getting into OO gauge when I already had a lot invested in working in N gauge and I didn't really have space available for a large, fully operational OO gauge layout. Also see my lengthy series on my N gauge railway modelling for smaller and more complex scenery and smaller scale trains running. This part is the second dealing with my third layout, to be made using mainly Hornby EZ Track. See the previous part, part 27, for my reasons for wanting to try a Hornby EZ Track layout when I already had a layout using Bachmann EZ Track. This part deals with more initial prep work on my Hornby layout. In the previous part, I got as far as building a baseboard and getting it basically in place, at least in a preliminary fashion. I had done a basic layout design and bought the Hornby EZ Track needed for that design, and I just hooked up a few pieces of the EZ Track and tried them out on the board with a little Caledonian 264 Pug loco. Basically what I'm trying to do at this stage of layout development is just to see if the track will actually fit together properly to make my designed layout, then assuming it does fit together to see how the track making up the layout fits on the board, and then to consider any adjustments to the layout plan before I do anything at all permanent towards fixing the track in place on the board. There are actually several other complications at work here. For one thing, I'm still waiting for some basic pieces that I need for this layout. I've bought a Tech 2 dual power controller to use with this layout, but that hasn't been delivered yet. That's not a major issue since there are lots of things to do before I would be hooking up a controller to finally laid track. More significantly, I want to put a back scene behind the layout, and I've bought something suitable, but that hasn't been delivered yet. To mount the back scene, I will need to remove the board, and then at the same time as I mount the back scene, I'll position the board more permanently with proper wooden supports. While I'm doing this, the board will be bare again with all this temporary track removed, but I will have marked the intended position of all the track after arriving at the final version of the design and before removing the temporary track. Then, while the board has no track on it, I'll put in a bit of ground contour. No big hills, I think, on this layout, but just a bit of something so it's not completely flat, which would hardly be realistic. And then I'll do some painting of the ground and apply some static grass before starting the permanent track laying. And come to think of it, that's another thing I'm waiting for. I've ordered some more static grass for this layout, and that hasn't come yet. But in the interim, I can have some fun playing around with the track on the board and settle what I'm going to do with my layout plan. This was my layout plan as far as I had got it when I bought the track, and it was on this basis that I first started laying down the track to check the fit. Here I've got the two main loops connected, and they seem to fit on the board pretty much as expected. There will be a 2-platform station along the long straight at the back, a platform kit already on hand and building kit bought and on the way. All of the points will be in the area currently blank towards the front of the board, so I'll be able to change them all manually without a problem and won't need to motorise the points on this layout. I will be running the two loops separately as the basis for two separate control zones, so I want to put an isolated rail join in between the two loops so that it won't be possible for shorting occurring across the two zones. To do this, I need to replace the metal fish plates connecting the 2 points between the loops, making a crossover between the two loops, with insulating fish plates. Here are the metal fish plates that came factory installed on the Hornby points. I need to remove these. It was a lot easier to remove the Hornby factory fish plates than the Bachmann ones. To remove the Bachmann mounted fish plates, I had to completely mangle them as they were pinned between the rails and the plastic roadbed. See my video on the prep for my Bachmann EZ Track layout. The Hornby fish plates pull off fairly easily, although some were easier to get off than others. Still, I was able to remove all those I needed without mangling them. Once the metal fish plates have been removed, the two tracks can be joined using plastic insulating joiners. And here is the fully insulated join between the two sets of points. But did you spot what I did wrong? I doubt it. Wouldn't really expect you to. I didn't spot it till I got to this point. If there's a wrong way to do something, I'll usually find it. I've put the isolating join between two left-hand points, but as per my layout plan, it actually needed to go between two right-hand points. So I undid the first isolating join I made and did it correctly using two right-hand points. I couldn't get the fish plates off the point at the back, so since I had more right-hand points on hand rather than trying to force it, I just used a different set of points. And there are the 2 points now correctly joined and isolated. So now I can fit that crossover between the 2 loops, so there's no electrical connection between them regardless how the points are set. But if I set the power on the 2 loops correctly, I will be able to move a loco, a train, between one loop and the other. And then I can fill out the rest of the points around that area. I don't believe that any of the others need to be isolated. I want to have a road coming into the area in the middle of the layout by crossing the tracks here via a level crossing. Since there will be 3 tracks, the 2 loops and a siding, I bought a Hornby double level crossing and a Hornby single level crossing. Here's the double crossing still in its box where it's supposed to fit on the layout. And on the workbench here are the parts for the double crossing taken out of the box. The crossing can be made up using either gates or lifting barriers. Since I'm modelling operations in the 1930s, I clearly want the gates, so I won't be using the parts in the bag at bottom right, which are for barriers and lights. However, I also don't want all of those yellow and white lines on the roadbed. Those are a modern thing that didn't come into practice until around the 1970s and would be totally inappropriate for my period. So I needed to either paint over those lines or to remove them. Nigel of British Model Trains in Cambridge, Ontario, where I bought all my Hornby track, suggested that I could use lacquer thinner to remove the lines. However, when I opened my can of lacquer thinner, I found that it had all evaporated. That stuff is very volatile. So I ended up using nail polish remover instead, basically acetone. Not such a bad thing, as nail polish remover is a lot more benign than lacquer thinner, which will strip your skin right off if you're not careful. Well, it will sure sting at least. It took a fair bit of scrubbing with the nail polish remover to get the paint lines off. I used a plastic kitchen scouring pad, but it did mark the plastic of the crossing a bit, and it also left little pink bits from the scouring pad in all the little grooves. So next I tried to clean up the crossing with an old toothbrush and then polish it up a bit with some very fine abrasive sheet. The gate posts came on a sprue, and they had these numbers on them which I didn't like, so I sanded them off, as I have done on the post at top left here. Here's the double crossing assembled with its gates. The roadbed is a bit scratched from my scouring, but that's not the worst possible thing. Here's the double crossing connected up in the 2 loops. This completes the inner and outer loops, so they now go all the way round. The outer loop is 3rd radius and the inner loop is 2nd radius. Hopefully that should be okay for all my rolling stock, but I will do some more testing before final track laying. I completely avoided 1st radius curves, as so much rolling stock is not rated to run on 1st radius. I ran into an additional hiccup with the single level crossing. I had assumed that, like the double crossing, it would be a complete unit incorporating its own track, but it isn't. With the single crossing, you just get pieces to go on either side of track and a piece to go on the middle, but you're expected to provide your own track. This is not so good. Apart from needing an extra straight that I didn't expect to need, the single crossing is definitely not as solid and dependable for running as the double one. In the previous picture, I hadn't got the side pieces of the single crossing fully fitted onto the track. They do have tabs that fit into the slots in the side of the Hornby track, where power clips and other Hornby accessories can fit. And with the tabs slotted in, the top of the side pieces go right over the tops of the sleepers on the side of the track. The centerpiece presses down over the sleepers, but it doesn't have a very positive fit, and I'm definitely afraid that it will tend to pop up and derail rolling stock. Perhaps I'll have to try to glue it in place. Once the level crossings were in place, I went ahead and added the rest of the sidings, and did some basic testing of the layout with a little Pug loco. I do have a Hornby electrically operated turntable, and that is intended to go on the branch at inner right here, but I haven't even unboxed the turntable yet. I'm expecting that to be a bit complicated in itself, and I'll devote a day and probably a video part specifically to that in the near future. For this initial testing, I've been using a little old Bachmann controller since the dual power controller ordered for this layout hasn't arrived yet, and the Hornby HM6000 Bluetooth controllers that I have won't work at all. I was connecting the little Bachmann controller using Hornby power clips and a Hornby plug that I cut off from one of my HM6000s, but that didn't work very well as the plug didn't make good contact in the power clips, and I had to keep jiggling the plug to make the loco work. Then I remembered that I had a Bachmann power clip and the associated cable, and that worked way better. You can see why. This is the Bachmann power clip and the plug on its cable. The power clip has flat metal contacts, and when you push on the plug, it firmly traps the metal contacts in the clip between two metal contacts in the plug. On the other hand, the Hornby power clips just have a metal contact flat on the bottom, and they rely on the round pins on the plug being pushed down onto the flat contact at the bottom by the plastic forming the hole above. At least in my experience, this doesn't happen reliably, resulting in intermittent contact at best, and frankly I don't think this is very surprising because it looks like a very poor design to me. Anyway, now let's see a bit of running video of the track at this point in the process. Okay, so I've got my initial layout plan laid out here on the board. Now this is not fixed down and none of it's intended to be permanent. This is just to see what the layout looks like, if the track pieces will fit together properly and how they fit on the board. That's all this is for. It's not intended in any way to be permanent, but I'm using the track clips to connect the power at the moment. I did manage to get the plug to go into these. These are brand new track clips and they are tight enough that that plug can go in them. So there's the little Pug loco going round the inner loop there. And that would be the station at the back there. That's where the station's intended to go. And there's the level crossing, so we'll stop him there for a minute. We change that point. All the points are at the front here, with the intention that it should be possible to change them manually so I don't need to wire points, and he can go into that siding. A little bit further forward, or if we put that point over, he can go into that siding. And that all seems to work okay. So we bring him out again and we change that point and he can go round. Well, maybe we'll just bring him back here rather than taking him all the way around. Now, unfortunately I can't power both circuits at once at the moment because I've only got one controller. So he's going to stop when he hits the isolated join on the point there. Yep, which I expect him to fully because there's no connection there. So, but now, hopefully, if I can plug the power across here without short-circuiting it, we should be able to... Oh, famous last words. No. I would have thought he should be getting power there, but he doesn't seem to be. He does not seem to be. Oh, I know why. Because the point isn't set. I didn't remember to set that point first. You've got to set that point now. If that point is set, then he should get power there. Famous last words. Oh. No, any power there? We should have. Yes. Bad connection. As I've said before, these... Whoops, stop. As I've said before, these plugs don't really connect well into the power connectors. It's not a good way of connecting. I have no intention of wiring the power like this, really. I'm going to use Pico joiners with wires soldered to them coming up through the board for the joins, really. But anyway, so there he is going round the outer line. Now, if I change this point and this point, it should be possible to bring him back onto this outer siding. Yep, that's famous last words. He should still be getting power there. Why isn't he? Now he's hitting the wires. Famous last words. I don't know if it's not one thing, it's another. It seems like this point isn't connecting the power very well. Between one thing and another, oh yes, between one thing and another it's not easy because that's a lousy connection. That's a lousy connection and the wires here, but anyway, I mean, famous last, I don't think this point's making it a particularly good connection. No. I don't know. Which bit of the connector's not working, really, you don't know. And then it does work and it hits the power. I don't know. Well, obviously this is not a great way of doing it. But anyway. Oh, I know why. I've got an isolator in there. That's meant to do that. That joint is an isolator, so this end is intended to be powered separately. That's why. That's intentional. I've got an isolator in here because I want to be able to park trains in here whilst bringing trains out of the head shunt, and of course I can't power the head shunt. So the idea is this and this are intended to be powered separately. See, I have a broken sleeper there. Now this should work again. Famous last words. If I can make the power connect. Famous last words. So there we go. Whoa, he's a fast loco, this guy. I mean, that's only about 10% power. He really likes to go fast, that loco. So there you go. Now I'm thinking of making some changes. I mean, this is the whole point of this, is to you know, settle the layout and things. The turntable is intended to be over there. I haven't put the turntable in. Yeah, this is basically this power. This is basically this, what you're seeing here is basically this design, except I haven't put the turntable in yet, which is intended to be over there. Whoops. And I'm thinking now that I might put another siding at this end because I've got a certain amount of room at this end of the board. So I might put another siding there and well, I might, but we'll see. I might put another siding there, and I might even just extend the loop a teeny bit so that this by 1.5 inches or so. We'll see if I've got room, if I move the sidings out a little bit, so I've got, those sidings aren't quite so close to the main line, these here. But we'll see. This is the whole point of this, is just to experiment and see, you know, what I can do with the layout before I do anything permanent. Then once I decide on the permanent layout, you know, how I'm going to do the track, I'll mark it, and then I'll take it all up and paint where the track bed's going to go, and then lay down track bed and, you know, permanently lay the track down with proper power joins. And I've already got a switch here for to switch the switchable power supplies. And I've got one thing of track underlay, but they only had one in stock at my hobby store down the road. So I'm probably going to need another, because I don't think 25 foot of that's going to be enough. But, and I've got some cork. I bought a roll of 3 foot by 2 foot cork, which I've got in another room, trying to trying to get it to lay a bit flat because it came as a roll, so it's all very springy and keeps one to spring into a roll. The idea is I was thinking I'd put cork like under here where there's all the points, because it's a bit hard to do under all the points with track underlay. So I was thinking I'd put cork under that whole area where all the points are, and then use the foam track bed round for the rest of the track. And I'm not sure what's going to happen with the turntable. I do have the turntable, but I haven't even taken it out of its box yet. So that's another whole issue, seeing what's going to happen with the turntable. But anyway, so far that's my initial layout, and as I say now, I just want to try a couple of little variations on it before I commit to any permanent sort of track marking.